Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the Path to Liberty. It's Monday, April 13th, 2020. On today's episode, I'm going to cover some reports about police in Kentucky following a new order from the governor to record the license plates of anyone attending a church service or other mass gathering over the weekend, and then send them an order for a 14-day quarantine or isolation. And I think it's also a really good time to give an overview of automated license plate reader technology. Those are called ALPRs, and license plate tracking programs, which are being implemented, been used for a long time, and then another new one, if I have time, that's a proposal in Washington, D.C. that's pending. First of all, my name is Michael Bolden. We broadcast live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Time from here in my home office and studio in downtown Los Angeles for the 10th Amendment Center. We've got a bunch of live streaming video platforms like Facebook, YouTube, DLive, Twitch, and Periscope or Twitter. We have archive video versions on Brighteon.com, BitChute, BitTube, and Library. And then, of course, the audio-only podcast edition, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Podbean, and elsewhere. You can find all of those platforms, all of our previous episodes, all the archives, links to important stuff that I mentioned in the show notes for each episode, all of our social media channels, ways to subscribe to our newsletter, and our membership program, which starts out as little as $2 a month. I see a bunch of you guys out there who are members of the TAC, and I'm very, very grateful for you being with us and supporting our work. That's all over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty. Again, spelled out, 10thamendmentcenter.com/path to liberty. I want to take a quick look over in the live chat. I'm just going to say a quick hello and then dive right into the info that I want to share with you today. Essential Freedom, good to see you out in Missouri. Tyler B., Matt, Melody Skaman, D1, Patricia Dance, Bob Brewer down in Texas, MRGF78, Ray Eubinger, who says over on Facebook, time for everyone to stop using license plates. And I'm going to actually touch on that and what happened in Kentucky and their ways around this kind of stuff in the future as well. But whether you are live or in the archive, I appreciate all the messages, all the comments. All that stuff actually triggers the algorithm of the platform you happen to be on, whether you're watching or listening, whatever, reviews on iTunes, etc. That tells the platform to show the program to more people. So thank you so much for all sharing your thoughts. I do read through all the comments later in the day. I don't get a chance to reply to everything. But if you've got an idea for a show in the future, too, you can always email me, team@10thamendmentcenter.com. Again, team@10thamendmentcenter.com. Hi to Daniel, Citizen Z, and everyone else. Thank you so much for being here. But let's dive into it. I want to first start out with a warning, some advice from the penman of the revolution, a guy named John Dickinson. So if you listen to the show regularly, you hear me talk about Dickinson pretty regularly. He was very influential, and he's also very influential on our work here at the TAC. And this was in Letters from a Farmer in Pennsylvania, one that I cite pretty regularly, 1767, 1768, where he was writing in opposition to the hated Townshend Acts. And here's how Dickinson put it, and I think this applies well today. He said, all artful rulers who strive to extend their power beyond its just limits endeavor to give their attempts as much semblance of legality as possible. I mean, I think that one's pretty self-explanatory, but a quick reminder. We know that politicians will always try to extend their power beyond what they're authorized to do, what's been delegated to them. We know that those politicians aren't going out there and telling us, well, this is illegal for me to do, but I'm going to do it anyways because it's needed, or this is unconstitutional, but I'm going to do it anyways. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that either, but I would at least respect someone for their honesty. Instead, what we have, and it's politician after politician, it's year after year, decade after decade, it doesn't matter if it's on a state, a local, a federal, whatever level, they all tell us how everything they do is legal. If we were just listening to the politicians, there would never be any illegal act of any government anywhere on earth at any time in history, because they always try to sell it to us as this is okay. Now, mind you, a lot of times they get concurrence or support from other branches of the government that give them the power, like maybe Congress redelegates a power to declare war to the executive branch, and then the executive just says, well, Congress gave me that power. If you got a problem with it, go to Congress and have them take it away. But that's not really how it works. They always try to sell us that what they're doing is okay. And I thought it was good to start out with Dickinson's warning on this reminder that he calls them artful rulers. I think they all are very artful politicians. But with that, let's take a look at the Kentucky governor, his warning and this order that he issued on Friday. And this is from a press release from the office of the governor, again, April 10th. He says he's warning anyone planning to attend an in-person mass gathering this weekend that they will face quarantine orders. So what's going to happen? Anyone who's going, if you decide to go to a large event over the weekend, this was last Friday, you were going to get a 14-day quarantine. He says anyone attending such a gathering will be notified it is a misdemeanor violation of the emergency orders issued by the governor and Kentucky Department of Public Health. The governor said the order is for all mass gatherings and not just worship services. Going further, the governor said Kentucky State Police will be recording the license plate numbers of any vehicles seen at the gatherings. Local health officials will then contact the people associated with those vehicles and require them to self-quarantine for 14 days. And that's what got me thinking about automated license plate readers. I've covered these surveillance tools on this show many times. And as I was reading about this last week, I'm thinking, oh man, okay, this is probably pretty easy to do. And I will explain the technology again. I know you guys who watch the show regularly, you're probably pretty familiar with this. But I was thinking, oh man, this is going to be easy for cops to do. They're just going to have to set up one pole or a mobile tripod or maybe a couple of patrol cars. They've definitely got license plate readers in Kentucky. They've got them everywhere. And they just got to just sit there. These things record up to 1,800 license plates per minute. So they've got this covered. But anyways, here's how it played out. And this is from the Courier-Journal. And this is a report that came out yesterday morning, and they put it this way. As hymns sang out Easter Sunday from a large outdoor speaker overlooking the Maryville Baptist Church parking lot, 2 Kentucky State troopers placed quarantine notices on parishioners' cars and wrote down their license numbers. Inside the church, roughly 50 worshipers ignored the governor's order against mass gatherings during the pandemic so they could attend services together on Christianity's holy day. So there were about 50 people who went to this particular church. They said, they were going to just defy this order to not go. And then there were pictures, and I actually will pull up some images here. Maybe I can describe them as best I can as I'm going through it. The Courier actually published a number of interesting pictures. It looks like, and I'm not sure if the cops did this or if some, quote, concerned citizen did this, but people were literally dumping nails and tacks on the driveway into the parking lot there as a way to discourage people or maybe block the entrance. Maybe they were thinking, oh, okay, you get someone to blow out all their tires. I'm not sure if that's if you watch in movies, you could see these tools that they roll a piece of thing out, the nails are pointing up. You're not necessarily going to always blow a tire by rolling over a nail that's laying down sideways. So I'm assuming the police didn't do this. They actually have techniques that would be far more effective, whether you agree with them or not. They actually are very good at blowing out tires if they want to. So someone dumped a bunch of nails out. Maybe it's sending a message. We're gonna damage your vehicles if you do this. Now, mind you, here in Southern California, there were a bunch of people at a party in San Bernardino, I think, over the weekend. And they were violating the stay-at-home order as well. And someone did a drive-by shooting. I don't think anyone got killed, but 6 people got shot. So people are going a little crazy. And to me, that actually is very concerning as well. So this is an interesting picture. A lot of people were dumping, or somebody was dumping nails trying to block people from getting in. Other people, and I can't remember who mentioned it right off the bat, said stop using license plates. But people were basically taping up their license plate. You can see a guy here with, it looks like a pickup truck or something. He just covered it up, put some tape over it, maybe some packing tape, masking tape, something like that, and covered it up. Other people did the same thing here on this Ford Mustang. covered up the license plate. Now, what's interesting, though, is everybody's supposed to have face covers, and I'm not sure if they have the same rules there in Kentucky as they do here in Maryville. But you notice that the police aren't wearing gloves, they aren't wearing respirator masks, they aren't wearing any protective gear at all. They're just out and about, no problem. So if they're not concerned about the government employees, I wonder why they're so concerned about the people inside. I don't know. So you can see them going out. They're looking at the license plates. This guy's on his radio. He's got a pack of these quarantine notices. That's the first picture I'll get to in a moment. Now, mind you, they don't actually have to do this by hand. All the reports I've read, I haven't gotten exactly a clear detail to tell me whether or not they actually used automated license plate readers. They could have. If they didn't, and they wanted to be good at this, it would have been a lot easier. They wouldn't have had to send somebody out there, unless maybe they did it that way. A lot of people said the cops were out there recording them, hand recording them, and then they'd take these little notices, and anybody who was in the parking lot, they put an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, a printout that says, notice you are given an order to quarantine, self-isolate for the next 14 days because you went to this event here on Sunday. So you can see a number of people that were protesting, other people going to the event. And here's the cops again walking around. Maybe it's state police walking around without any protective gear or anything like that. So they're telling everybody else that they have to stay home, but meanwhile, their own employees are just walking about freely as much as they need to do whatever they want to get done. So I just wanted to kind of give an update on what was going on there and then just kind of segue right into automated license plate readers. And again, those of you who watch or listen to the show regularly, you're pretty familiar with this information, but let's go through it again because I think it's important. The goal is, the key is that what they're doing today, we've warned for so long that they're going to use this type of technology to build profiles on people doing things that the government doesn't want them to do. And whether it's in a time of a healthcare emergency or if it's a time of just non-emergency. There's always a different type of emergency that government is going to use to expand its power, but we've learned they're going to build profiles based on pictures of their license plates into huge databases of people that go to different protests, rallies, stores, gun shops, churches, whatever it may be. And here's an overview from Electronic Frontier Foundation about automated license plate readers. They are high-speed, computer-controlled camera systems that are typically mounted on street poles, street lights, highway overpasses, mobile trailers, or attached to police squad cars. I'll show you guys some pictures here in a couple minutes. And if you're just listening to the audio version, the podcast edition, I will actually link to these as well. So if you want to go back and look at the pictures of what was going on in Kentucky, you can see that as well. That'll be in the show notes at 10thamendmentcenter.com/path-to-liberty. Again, 10thamendmentcenter.com/path-to-liberty. So they go on. They say ALPRs automatically capture all license plate numbers that come into view, along with the location, date, and time. The data, which includes photographs of the vehicle and sometimes its driver and passengers, is then uploaded to a central server. Now, then they take the information in that central server. This is not a central server in Maryville, Kentucky, or in Los Angeles, California. This is a central server that everybody has access to. This is shared through post-9/11 authorities called information sharing environment, and then they built fusion centers as well. So this has access everybody. So if this happened in Kentucky, you can be certain that people in Chicago, Illinois, Los Angeles, Boise, Bangor, Maine, they all have access to who went where, when in Kentucky because of the license plate data. Now, even if they were taking it down by hand, they were absolutely sharing it, putting it into a database, and that you can be 100% sure of that. And that's where it gets really crazy. Taken in aggregate, EFF writes, ALPR data can paint an intimate portrait of a driver's life and even chill First Amendment protected activity. Oh, that sounds familiar. And this was written years ago, mind you. ALPR technology can be used to target drivers who visit sensitive places, such as health centers, immigration clinics, gun shops, union halls, protests, or centers of religious worship. Going further, here's a couple of pictures of two basic types of them. There are stationary. These are mounted, for example, they look like red light cameras, for example. They may look like fast track. If you live in a city like here in LA, they have these fast track passes. And if you want to use part of the freeway that they haven't clogged down by reducing the lanes for everybody else, you get this little transponder, and then they have these cameras that keep track of it. Now, mind you, if you don't have that transponder in your car, they take a picture of your license plate and of your face as best as they can. And of course, they send you a ticket in the mail. But they don't always have to be fixed, mounted like that. I don't actually have a picture of one handy, but there's a brand called Myovision. They make it on mobile tripods that roll around on wheels. So just like a regular tripod, a little bit more high duty. You can see them outside of parking lots, supermarkets, and things like that. And that makes them very easy to use. So the cops may have done that in Kentucky. I'm not certain. Maybe Clay Davis, who I saw in the live chat, I know Clay lives in Kentucky, may actually know a little bit more about what went down, whether they were just handwriting them or what, but they absolutely could do that. And I wouldn't be surprised, following the lead of the Kentucky governor, that other localities start doing similar and maybe ramping things up. And you tie that in with the information that I was sharing on Friday's show about the geofencing happening in Utah, also in New Mexico and elsewhere, where they're actually drawing a picture on a map technologically, and any vehicle that enters that area gets an alert on their phone because they know where everybody is, where they're going in real time. And then they're able to send them an alert and give them an order to say, well, you got to pull over at the next exit and then register with the state where you've come from, where you're going, what's your health condition, and the like. So they have stationary ALPR cameras. And then this is also a picture. This one's from California Highway Patrol. This is a mobile ALPR. This is what you'll see on most police vehicles, at least in major cities. A lot of the smaller towns have these as well. Just along the top of the vehicle with a light. It's about 9 inches wide, 7 to 9 inches deep, and 2 to 3 inches height. And they have cameras pointing in 6 directions, it looks like. 2 in the front, 2 on the side pointing sideways, 2 in the back. And so these are out there all the time as well. Keep in mind that once they put that information in the databases through information sharing environment, fusion centers, and the like, what's happening in Marysville is available everywhere else. I did an episode on this late November 2018. The episode was titled 2.5 billion, Surveillance State Goes Wild. And EFF, Electronic Frontier Foundation, and Muckrock did a bunch of Freedom of Information Act requests, FOIA requests from law enforcement agencies around the country. They got responses from only about 200. Now, 200 is significant, but they got 200 responses where they were actually able to dig into the information. And over a 2-year period, mind you, this was a couple of years ago, over a 2-year period from 2016 through 2017, these 200 or so law enforcement agencies had done 2.5 billion scans of license plates around the country, and everybody had access to them. I know I always say Boise, but Portland, Oregon had access to something from Salt Lake, Utah, had access to something from Austin, Texas, had access to people in Lexington, Kentucky, and on and on and on. So everyone, all these law enforcement agents are really acting like a federal or a national police state, a national surveillance state, tracking people for the mere crime of driving. And we went through this information, and Muckrock and EFF, I went through it, what they did, the research they did. And it turned out that of those 2.5 billion over 2 years, only 0.5% of people were ever even under suspicion of criminal activity. 99.5% were literally just having their activities monitored and recorded for the crime of driving, for existing, for your right to travel. And as I go through this type of information, I keep getting some people tell me things like, Bolden, they'll never take it up to the next level. They're just giving out tickets. And we know even people who are generally on our side, I'll hear things like, well, of course, this is a revenue scheme. They want to be able to pass out tickets. They want to use red light cameras. They're never going to use it for more nefarious purposes. And you'll always have a segment of people who say, well, either if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. I encourage them to all give me access to their email accounts if they want to do that, if they want to have that attitude. But then at the same time, you have people who say it'll never get to the point of what you warn it could be. And even EFF, which is pretty mainstream, is saying they could use this technology to target people based on the type of places they visit. And now we already see a glimmer of that kind of playing out today. And if the governor of Kentucky is willing to take this approach, basically record their license plates, put it in a database, and then send people a notice telling them what they can or can't do based on attending a specific event, what do you think the next guy's going to do? If you don't even think that governor is bad, let's say you agree with him. Let's say you think this is a really good idea in Kentucky. I'm not trying to sell you one way or the other. Let's say you love it. It's an emergency. It has to be done. Well, what do you think Donald Trump or the next president, Joe Biden, or any of these people in the future, what do you think they're going to use this type of technology, this type of approach to do something in the future? I don't think it bodes very well at all. Now, mind you, they are also using this type of technology. They're doing something called gridding. And here's an article from Jay Private last July 12, 2019. And he writes, law enforcement is using license plate readers to grid entire neighborhoods. So what does gridding mean? He says, this comes from the Arizona Mirror, which is a place in Arizona. They're doing this gridding pretty regularly. It's as part of the training for ALPR systems, Chandler, Arizona police officers are taught to grid neighborhoods during their downtime, systematically driving up and down every street in an area, indiscriminately scooping up information on vehicles. And Jay Private goes on, gridding entire neighborhoods allows Big Brother to form a detailed and highly accurate pattern of everyone's driving habits day and night, 24/7. Now, if you've heard me talk about this, how things are here in LA since the stay-at-home order, I noticed a few days before the whole thing went in, I live in an area, even though it's a very busy part of town, I'm in downtown Los Angeles. It's more of a residential end, and we don't actually have much of police presence here on a regular basis. It's kind of a restaurant, art gallery, nightlife district, and for some reason, it's just pretty chill, very low crime, nice lofts and things like that, things to do, people walking around with their dogs, coffee shops, and you just don't see cops at all. In general, I would say during more normal times, I would see a police cruiser maybe once a month, something like that. But like 2 to 3 days before we got our stay-at-home order here in LA, I started noticing a cop car patrolling every 30 minutes to an hour. And I immediately thought, wow, that is weird. Something is going on. And of course, we have the helicopters flying over 24/7. Maybe every hour or so we get one flying by. And that's also been ramped up. So this kind of ties in. I don't know. Are they gridding the neighborhood? Are they determining who's leaving, who's parked? Well, why are you parked over in this part of town where you live in Brentwood or Santa Monica or another part of the city? I don't know. But this is a process that the ALPR companies actually tell the law enforcement agencies, hey, when you guys have downtime, do this, because the ALPR companies want more and more data, and they want to be able to provide this real-time data based on where everybody is all the time. Now, the police department commander, Ed Upshaw in Chandler, Arizona, he said police gridding, he compared it to a YouTuber recording someone in public. He says if your vehicle is parked in a public space or visible from a publicly accessible place, it can be recorded by anyone. Is there a reason a YouTuber can record but police cannot? This is a false dichotomy. The message is, the idea is that the YouTuber may just be walking around getting a video of themselves talking about makeup or clothes or whatever, the weather, who knows, flat earth, doesn't matter. But they're not using that video recording to keep tabs on where your vehicle is at all times and build a database on you where you're going. And that's what government does at all times. One more thing that I wanted to cover as well is this report about the Federal Safe Drivers Act. This is a proposed law, and I think the reason that I want to cover it one more time, I covered it in an episode last fall, sometime in October. The reason I want to cover it again is because so many of the things that we see, especially on the surveillance end, that come out of emergencies, are things that have been kind of sitting pending. They're kind of just sitting there, waiting on the table, and they haven't really moved forward in Congress. The Patriot Act was prepped long before the Patriot Act was passed. It was ready to go before 9/11. The invasion of Iraq, they had plans for that for years. Through the Project for a New American Century, PNAC, and other organizations, they had plans for the invasion of Iraq well before any of that actually happened. And one of the other things that they actually have planned, and I don't know how far it'll go, but this is a proposal, a bill that's sitting in Congress under consideration. It hasn't moved forward yet, but it's a Safe Drivers Act to create a real-time national driver surveillance program. And I think tied in with all the things that we're facing today, this is the type of thing that we could see happen, and we shouldn't be surprised when they do try to implement something like this. Just reading from the report, a bill introduced in the U.S. House would create a real-time national driver surveillance program that would allow law enforcement to know anything and everything about a driver at the click of a button. The Safe Drivers Act, introduced by Representative Seth Moulton, a Democrat from Massachusetts, designed for one purpose, and that is to share everything a motorist has ever done with law enforcement nationwide. And if you tie that in with the idea that they are already sharing that information all over the place when it came to license plate scans, we know through Fusion Centers and information sharing environment, all surveillance information, facial recognition, Stingray cell site simulator surveillance, drone surveillance, whatever it may be, even security cam surveillance, all of this stuff is shared with everyone all the time. They just want to make a very frictionless driver tracking program to expand on the one that the DEA has been running based off of state and local ALPR data for about 9 or 10 years now. This is how Jay Private puts it. He says, apparently knowing a driver's social security number, address, date of birth, checking their driver record, and running their name against the National Criminal Database is not enough. And I think his summary here really is great to close this out on. He says, by storing and tracking everything a motorist has ever been involved in, we are turning every driver into a suspected criminal. It's a perpetual lineup for the crime of driving. And he says, that scares the you-know-what about me. Just want to take a quick look over in the live chat before wrapping things up and see if there's any interesting questions. Fuzz T Fork 8 over on YouTube says it's getting harder for me to retrieve roadkill with no one traveling. Will I starve? Teresa Jr. says, really stretching here. I'm not sure what we're stretching about. If that's to me, I just think this is all very interesting. There's tons of surveillance that's been happening for a long time. And we know that, as John Adams warned us back in 1776, that fear is the foundation of most governments. In times of fear and emergency, you're going to get things like the war in Iraq, the Patriot Act, more surveillance, facial recognition, the Real ID Act, and the like. So, I forgot to mention, covering the license plate actually doesn't do the trick. So what was happening, at least in that report from the Courier-Journal in Kentucky, let me see if I can pull this back up. So everybody has to do what they're comfortable with. The pastor said he did cover his own license plate, as did several other parishioners. And according to the report, it didn't matter. Troopers took down the VIN numbers instead. Now, obviously, taking down VIN numbers is not something that they're able to do, at least from my knowledge, yet, with an automated license plate reader, so it forces it into a manual situation. So if they are relying on the technology to scan the license plates and you're not concerned about getting pulled over, obviously people were going ahead and doing it this route. They were not fearful of getting pulled over and having their car impounded or getting a ticket for covering their plate. I think here in LA, the LAPD would have a field day with something like that, but I guess we all make choices in life, right? But I think that just about covers it. I'm not sure if I can actually get through any questions here. If you've got further thoughts on this, I will check the comments a little bit later on today and answer as many questions as you may have. So please continue leaving comments and your thoughts on this, whether it's live or later on in the archive. I will definitely check that out. You can also email me, team@10thamendmentcenter.com, about this show, or if you have suggestions for a future episode. And of course, if you support what we're doing here at the TAC, make sure to smash that like button hit subscribe. If you're listening to a podcast, leave a review on whatever platform you happen to be on. And if you really want to pitch in, our membership program starts out as little as $2 a month, and we make it go a long, long way. You can sign up over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. Again, 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. I hope you are as safe, as happy, as healthy, and as stocked up as can be. And I'll see you next time here on the Path to Liberty.